Have you ever ended a busy day feeling completely exhausted and realized that the things that actually mattered barely moved forward? You answered emails, you handled messages, you crossed tasks off your list, but something important was still left behind. If that sounds familiar, here's what's really going on. And it's not what most productivity advice will tell you. In this video, you're going to learn 6 small habits that dramatically increase your focus and productivity, eliminate procrastination, and reduce the stress that silently follows most people every single day. No extreme routines, no waking up at 4 a.m., no complicated systems. Just practical habits that work. Starting with a hidden mistake most people repeat hundreds of times every day without ever realizing it. And once you see it, you'll never look at your daily routine the same way again. Let's get into habit number 1. 1. The trap of micro-decisions. Let me ask you a simple question. How many decisions do you think you've already made today? Not the big ones, the tiny ones. What should I do first? Should I answer this message now? Should I check my email? Should I finish this task or start another one? Should I take a break? Should I keep scrolling? Most people never think about these decisions. But your brain does. Every single one of them requires energy. Every single one demands attention. And here's the problem. Your brain has limited mental resources. Imagine carrying a backpack. At first it's empty. You barely notice it. Then someone places a small stone inside. No problem. Then another, and another, and another. Individually, each stone seems insignificant. But after hundreds of them, the weight becomes impossible to ignore. Micro-decisions work exactly the same way. Each one seems harmless. Together, they create mental fatigue. This is why some people feel exhausted before they've done any meaningful work. Their energy wasn't spent producing, it was spent deciding. Think about 2 people starting the same Monday morning. The first person wakes up and immediately begins reacting. Checking notifications, answering messages, trying to figure out what needs attention first. The second person spends 5 minutes planning the night before. They wake up already knowing their 3 most important priorities. By Friday, the difference between those 2 people feels enormous. Yet it started with a decision that took less than 5 minutes. Here's the rewarding part. If you're recognizing yourself in this pattern right now, you've already uncovered one of the biggest hidden drains on productivity. Awareness is the first step toward control. And the solution is surprisingly simple. Before going to sleep tonight, identify the 3 most important things you need to accomplish tomorrow. Not 10, not 20, just 3. When you wake up, the decision has already been made. Your brain no longer wastes energy asking where to start. It simply begins, and that small habit creates something powerful. Momentum, because once you start moving, continuing becomes easier. But there's another invisible force working against you, one that creates stress before you even realize you're stressed. And understanding it may explain why some days feel mentally exhausting, long before anything actually goes wrong. 2. The invisible origin of stress. Most people think stress arrives all at once. A difficult deadline, an unexpected expense, a demanding boss, a major life problem. But stress rarely begins there. In reality, stress often starts long before you consciously feel it. It begins when your brain loses its sense of control. Think about your environment for a moment. An unfinished project sitting on your desk. Dozens of browser tabs open. Unread emails. Notifications appearing every few minutes. Tasks you've been postponing for days. Individually, none of these seem like a big deal. But together, they create something psychologists call cognitive load. Your brain keeps a silent record of everything that still needs attention. Even when you're not actively thinking about those things, part of your mind remains occupied by them. Imagine trying to hold 10 different balls in the air at the same time. You might manage it for a while. But eventually, the effort becomes exhausting. That's exactly what many people do every day with their attention. They carry unfinished tasks from morning until night, and then they wonder why they feel mentally drained. Let me paint a familiar picture. You sit down to focus on an important task. A thought suddenly appears. I still need to answer that email. A few seconds later, another thought arrives. I should schedule that appointment. Then another. I forgot to finish that report. Nothing terrible has happened. Yet your attention is already fragmented. Your brain is constantly whispering reminders about everything that's unfinished. And over time, those whispers become stress. This is why productivity and stress are deeply connected. When your mind feels cluttered, your stress increases. When your stress increases, your focus decreases. And when your focus decreases, productivity suffers. It's a cycle that feeds itself. The good news is that breaking this cycle doesn't require a complicated system. It requires closure. One of the most effective habits you can build takes less than 5 minutes. At the end of each day, perform what I call a mental reset. Write down unfinished tasks. Clear unnecessary tabs. Organize your workspace. Identify tomorrow's priorities. Create a clear stopping point. This simple ritual sends an incredibly powerful message to your brain. Nothing is being forgotten. Everything has a place. Everything has a plan. As a result, your mind begins to relax. Your stress decreases. Your sleep improves. And you wake up feeling lighter. If you've ever gone to bed with a racing mind and woken up feeling tired before the day even started, this habit can change everything. But even when your tasks are organized and your mind feels clearer, another hidden problem continues stealing energy from millions of people. Most productivity advice completely ignores it, and yet it quietly destroys focus every single day. The surprising part is that it happens during moments most people never even notice. 3. The power of invisible transitions. Most people believe productivity is determined by what happens while they're working. They focus on concentration, discipline, time management, willpower. But one of the biggest factors affecting your productivity happens between tasks, and most people never notice it. Think about how your day usually unfolds. You're working on an important project. A notification appears. You stop for a moment. You answer a message. While answering that message, you remember an email you forgot to send. You switch to your inbox. While checking your inbox, you see another task that needs attention. Before you realize it, 15 minutes have passed, then 30, then an hour, and somehow the original task is still unfinished. Sound familiar? This isn't a lack of discipline. It's the hidden cost of constant transitions. Your brain isn't designed to jump instantly from one context to another. Every time you switch activities, part of your attention stays behind. Imagine reading a book and stopping halfway through a chapter, then immediately starting another book, and then another, and another. Even if you continue reading, your mind remains partially attached to the previous stories. The same thing happens throughout your day. Psychologists often refer to this phenomenon as attention residue. A portion of your focus remains connected to the previous task, while you're trying to engage with the next one. The more frequently you switch, the more fragmented your attention becomes. This explains something many people experience but rarely understand. By the end of the day, they're exhausted. Not because they work too hard, because their attention has been pulled in too many directions. Imagine 2 employees working for 8 hours. The first person spends most of the day switching between messages, emails, notifications, meetings, and unfinished tasks. The second person works in focused blocks with clear transitions between activities. Both work the same number of hours, but one ends the day feeling drained and overwhelmed. The other finishes feeling accomplished and mentally clear. The difference isn't effort, it's attention management. And here's where things become powerful. You can dramatically improve your focus with a habit that takes less than 30 seconds. Before switching to a new task, pause. Take a slow breath. Ask yourself one simple question. What is the next action I'm about to focus on? Not the entire project, not tomorrow's responsibilities, not everything on your list, just the next action. This brief pause creates a mental boundary. It allows your brain to close one chapter before opening another. Over time, this simple practice reduces mental chaos. You feel less rushed. You feel more present. You regain a sense of control over your attention. And that's important because attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. In fact, there is another resource that may be even more important. Most people spend years trying to manage their time. But the people who consistently perform at their best understand that time is not the real issue. The real issue is energy. And once you understand the difference, your entire approach to productivity begins to change. 4. Why your energy matters more than your time for decades. We've been told that productivity is all about time management. Manage your calendar. Schedule every hour. Optimize your routine. Plan your day more carefully. While those strategies can be useful, they often miss a much bigger truth. Time is not your most valuable resource. Energy is. Think about it. Have you ever sat at your desk for 3 hours and accomplished almost nothing? Of course you have. Most people have. Now think about a different situation. A day when you felt completely focused. Your mind was clear. Ideas flowed naturally. You made decisions quickly. You accomplished more in 1 hour than you normally would in 3. What changed? You still had the same 60 minutes. The difference was your energy. This is where many people unknowingly sabotage themselves. They treat every hour of the day as if it were equal. But it isn't. Your brain operates in cycles. There are periods when your focus is naturally stronger, and there are periods when your mental energy begins to decline. The problem is that most people ignore these patterns. They schedule important work whenever they happen to have time available. Then they become frustrated when the results don't match their expectations. Imagine trying to run at full speed immediately after climbing a mountain. You might force yourself forward for a while, but eventually exhaustion wins. Mental performance works the same way. Your ability to focus, create, solve problems, and make decisions depends heavily on the quality of your energy. Let me tell you a simple story. 2 people decide to write a business proposal. The first person sits down late at night after a stressful day. They're mentally exhausted. They struggle to concentrate. The work feels difficult. The second person tackles the same project during their peak energy hours. Their thinking is sharper. Their focus lasts longer. They make progress faster. The task itself hasn't changed. The energy behind the task has. This is why highly productive people don't just manage schedules. They protect their energy. They identify the hours when their mind performs at its best, and they reserve those hours for their most important work. Creative thinking, problem solving, strategic planning, deep concentration. Everything else can wait. Emails can wait. Administrative tasks can wait. Routine responsibilities can wait. Your best energy should be invested where it creates the greatest return. This idea may sound simple, but it changes everything. Because the goal isn't to squeeze more work into your day. The goal is to get more value from the energy you already have. And there's something deeply liberating about that realization. You don't need to become a machine. You don't need to work harder than everyone else. You need to become more intentional about where your energy goes. Because your energy shapes your focus shapes your actions, and your actions shape your future. But even when you have energy, clarity, and a plan, there's still one obstacle that stops millions of people from making progress. It's the reason people postpone important goals. It's the reason unfinished projects pile up. And it's the reason so many dreams remain stuck in the planning stage. The surprising part is that this obstacle has very little to do with laziness. It has everything to do with how your brain reacts to big tasks. 5. The habit that eliminates half of your procrastination. Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood behaviors in the world. Procrastination. Most people think procrastination happens because they're lazy. They believe they lack discipline. They tell themselves they need more motivation. But what if none of those explanations are true? What if procrastination is actually your brain trying to protect you? That may sound strange, but stay with me. Your brain is constantly evaluating effort, risk, uncertainty, discomfort. When it encounters a task that feels large, complex, or overwhelming, it immediately begins looking for an easier alternative. Not because you're weak, because your brain is trying to conserve energy. Imagine standing at the base of a mountain. You know you need to reach the top. But when you look up, the climb feels enormous. Your first reaction isn't excitement. It's resistance. That's exactly how many goals appear in everyday life. Write a report, launch a business, get in shape, learn a new skill, organize your finances. The task itself isn't the problem. The size of the task is. And the larger it appears, the more likely you are to delay starting. Think about how often this happens. You tell yourself you'll begin after lunch, then after dinner, then tomorrow, then next week. Days pass, nothing changes. Meanwhile, the task grows larger in your imagination. And the larger it becomes, the harder it feels to start. This creates a cycle that traps millions of people. But there's a simple way to break it. Instead of asking, "How am I going to finish this?" ask, "What is the first step that takes less than 2 minutes?" This question changes everything. Because your brain no longer sees a mountain, it sees a single step. If you need to write a report, don't focus on finishing the report. Open the document, write the title. If you want to exercise, don't focus on completing a workout. Put on your shoes. If you need to organize your office, don't think about cleaning the entire room. Put away one item. These actions seem almost too small to matter, but that's exactly why they work. They bypass resistance. They create movement, and movement creates momentum. Here's something fascinating. Research consistently shows that action often comes before motivation, not after it. Most people wait until they feel motivated to begin. Highly productive people begin first and allow motivation to catch up. That's a powerful distinction, because motivation is unpredictable. Action is a choice. And every time you take a small step, you send a message to your brain. I'm moving forward. That message builds confidence. Confidence reduces resistance. And reduced resistance makes future action easier. If you're recognizing this pattern in your own life right now, that's good news. Because awareness creates leverage, and leverage creates change. But even people who master this habit eventually face another challenge. No matter how disciplined you become, there will be days when you fall behind, days when you lose focus, days when your routine breaks. The difference between success and failure often comes down to what happens next, and what you're about to learn may be the most important habit in this entire video. 6. The science of small restarts. At some point, every habit breaks. Every routine gets interrupted. Every productive person experiences setbacks. Yet many people still believe success belongs to those who never fall off track. That's one of the most damaging myths you can believe. Because the truth is much simpler. Success doesn't belong to people who never fail. It belongs to people who know how to restart. Think about how many times you've experienced something like this. You decide to eat healthier. A few days go well. Then one stressful day arrives and everything falls apart. You tell yourself you'll get back on track tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next month. Eventually, the habit disappears completely. The same thing happens with productivity. You miss a day, then another, then another. Soon, what started as a small interruption becomes a completely different lifestyle. But here's what's fascinating. The first missed day is rarely the problem. The second missed day is where the real danger begins. Imagine a pilot flying across the ocean. If the plane drifts slightly off course, the pilot doesn't panic. The pilot makes a small correction, then continues forward. Successful people approach habits the same way. They don't waste energy blaming themselves. They don't spend days feeling guilty. They simply adjust and continue. That's why one of the most powerful productivity rules you can adopt is incredibly simple. Never miss twice. Miss one workout? Exercise tomorrow. Miss one writing session? Write tomorrow. Miss one productive day? Take one meaningful action tomorrow. The goal is not perfection. The goal is recovery. And that's where many people finally free themselves from the cycle of guilt. Because guilt feels productive. But it isn't. Guilt keeps your attention trapped in the past. Action moves your attention toward the future. Every minute spent criticizing yourself is a minute not spent improving your situation. Imagine two people making the same mistake. The first person spends a week feeling disappointed. The second person takes one small action the next morning. A month later, their lives look completely different. Not because one person was smarter, not because one person had more talent, because one person restarted faster. That's the hidden power of resilience. And resilience is not about never falling. It's about refusing to stay down. When you understand this, setbacks lose much of their power. A bad day becomes just a bad day, not a bad life, not a failed goal, not proof that you're incapable. Just a temporary interruption. And temporary interruptions don't define your future. Your response to them does. Now, we've covered micro-decisions. We've uncovered the invisible source of stress. We've learned how transitions affect focus. We've explored the difference between time and energy. We've dismantled procrastination. And we've discovered the power of restarting. But all of these ideas point toward one final truth. A truth that has the power to completely change the way you think about progress, productivity, and the life you're building. Because your future is probably being shaped by something much smaller than you think. The sum of small choices. At the beginning of this video, I asked a simple question. Have you ever reached the end of a busy day and wondered where all your time went? Now you know the answer is often deeper than it appears. It isn't usually one major mistake. It isn't one catastrophic decision. It's the accumulation of small choices, small habits, small actions, small moments repeated day after day. Most people spend their lives searching for a breakthrough, a dramatic transformation, a single moment that changes everything. But real change rarely arrives that way. It arrives quietly, one decision at a time, one habit at a time, one day at a time. Think about a tree. A tree doesn't become strong because someone pulls on its branches. It grows because it receives water consistently. Day after day, month after month, year after year. Your productivity works the same way. Your confidence works the same way. Your future works the same way. The person you become is largely determined by what you repeatedly do when nobody is watching. The choice to plan. The choice to focus. The choice to begin. The choice to continue. The choice to restart. Those decisions may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time, they become your identity. And your identity shapes your destiny. This means your future is not being created by the goals you write down. It's being created by the habits you repeat, not the promises you make, not the motivation you feel, the habits you practice. 1 year from now, your life will likely reflect the small behaviors you consistently choose after finishing this video. Not tomorrow, not next Monday, not when circumstances become perfect. Starting now. And that's what makes this so powerful. You don't need to change everything today. You don't need a perfect system. You don't need more hours in the day. You need one small improvement, one better choice, one action that moves you forward. Because progress is rarely explosive, but it is almost always cumulative. Every productive life is built the same way, one small decision at a time. So before you leave, I want you to choose one habit from today's video. Just one. The habit you'll begin implementing today, then write a single word in the comments. Focus, energy, or restart. because sometimes one word is enough to mark the beginning of a completely different future. And remember this: the life you want is not built through giant leaps. It's built through small choices repeated long enough to change who you become.